All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today from wherever you are joining us from. Hope spring is starting to spring wherever you are. We we're definitely warming up down here in the South. So thanks for joining today. I'm your host, Don Baker, Director of Athletics for the Cobb County School District, about 25 miles northwest of Atlanta. Thanks to the NIAAA for this platform. I think that the back and forth that we have, especially with our special guests, and then obviously with one another, is invaluable. So I appreciate them allowing us to have this opportunity. Really excited that now the AD Roundtable is presented by Daktronics, the experts in scoreboards, video displays, and audio systems trusted by high schools across the country. Whether you're upgrading your scoreboard or dreaming of a big time video board, Daktronics has the tools to make it happen and even help you pay for it through sponsorship opportunities. They've been doing it since 1968, and they know how to make your game day unforgettable. So learn more at daktronics.com. As we discussed today, both with our special guest and then afterwards, if you've got a topic that you would like to discuss, we've said this on here before. This is a safe space. If you have something that you're just kind of struggling with right now, let us help you. We are better together. So put that in the chat, or if you've got a question for our special guest as we talk, you can put that in there as well. And then Becky will facilitate that when we get to that point. So today we are joined by Jamie Beckler. Jamie is an author, motivational speaker, leadership consultant, host of the popular Success is a Choice podcast. With a background as a championship athletic director, award-winning college basketball coach, and business consultant, he works with high-level sports teams and businesses, helping them maximize results. He is recognized as an expert in leadership, culture, and teamwork. We're going to talk about that today. Jamie is the author to close to a dozen books and now travels across the country speaking to groups and teams on how to reach their full potential and become people of influence. He speaks at some of the top conferences for educators, coaches, and administrators, and has worked with teams ranging from NBA teams to the Big Ten to small colleges, and now his premier role speaking to the AD Roundtable. Jimmy, thanks for saying yes, and welcome to the Roundtable.
Hey, I appreciate it, Don. Thanks for having me on, and I need to clip that out and give it to my wife. She always asks, "What is it exactly you do again? You just sit at home, or you go off traveling? But what exactly do you do?" So I need to clip that for her so she can watch that.
Anything I can do to promote you, I'll do it. I'll be your hype man. So, now, Jamie, this time of year when athletic leaders are having some really tough conversations with their staffs. We're getting toward the end of the year. I know that here in my district, we've just gone through our allotment phase where we know if we're going to lose spots or if we're going to gain them. And especially when they're considering a change in program leadership. At the same time, budget constraints can sometimes force leaders to stay with a coach that they might otherwise move on from. That's kind of where we are right now. If I let this person go, number one, they may not leave the building. They may just still be here, or that allotment may go away. So now what do I do? So for ADs who find themselves on the fence trying to decide whether to persevere or pivot, could you maybe speak to the story of RU Darby? That's a story that I first saw in the leadership playbook of yours. I think it's phenomenal. Tell us about what it teaches us about recognizing that difference between staying the course and making a necessary change.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll probably have more questions than specific answers for every situation, but I'll bring up a number of points, a number of things to think about. But I love how you bring up the RU Darby story. And if you're watching this, listening to this, and you haven't heard the RU Darby story before, it was way back in the day, the 1840s, the gold rush, and RU Darby was an East Coast person who wanted to strike it rich. He wanted to be a rich person, so he packed up his wagon, went out to the West Coast, and started digging for gold. And he really only found just little nuggets here and there. He didn't find the mother lode like he was looking for, and so he got frustrated. He got just like a lot of us do when we don't achieve our goal at least as quick as we would like. He got frustrated. He sold his plot of land. He sold his equipment, headed back out east, and the people that bought his equipment, the people that bought his land, they started digging on his land, and lo and behold, they found the mother lode. And some of you might have heard of 3 feet away, or you've seen the maybe a slogan, 3 feet away. but essentially an arm's length away, 3 feet away, where he stopped digging was where the mother lode was. And I would imagine that he would have found the mother lode if he had kept digging. Uh, but metaphorically speaking, a lot of us, we don't know how close we are to success sometimes. And so we stop digging, we stop persevering, we stop pushing through, we stop doing what we know to do is right. And, I can't guarantee as an athletic director, as a coach, if you keep doing what you think is right, I can't guarantee you'll have the success that you want or you'll reach your goal. But I can 100% guarantee you without question that if you quit, you will not achieve your goal. When you get frustrated and you quit and you pack up your bags and you head on home, you will not achieve your goal. Now, I mean, you bring that up in the context of maybe hiring, firing, or making coaching changes. You know, I think that that's something to remember just in totality. Most of us as athletic directors, we have values, we have a mission statement, we have a why, we have a motto, however you want to frame it. Like, we have a way of doing things. We have what we want our department to be about, or what I want to be about as an athletic administrator or as a leader. And so, are we persevering to achieve that mission, that goal, that vision statement, whatever it is? And sometimes we give up too quickly, or sometimes we compromise on that, or sometimes we're like a tumbleweed in the wind. I lived in Texas for a little bit, and a tumbleweed in the wind, whichever way the wind is blowing, that's which way we go. And we get frustrated. If parents do one thing, if admin does another thing, if we're seeing this on social media, if our coach is doing this, we start to move around based upon where the wind is blowing, and we lose sight of our why. We lose sight of what matters most. And so I think that that's important to understand from a general view, is what is important to us and what are we trying to achieve in our department. And then that's going to then play into, are we doing the things that are right? Are we doing the things that if we persevere at this, it gives us a better chance of achieving that goal? Now, there's certainly always course corrections. There's pivoting. There's adjustments that need to be made. So I'm not saying we do the old school, bang our head against the wall. What's insanity? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Sometimes we will have to course correct. We will have to adjust if the path that we're on we know is not going to work, or it's counter to what we're trying to achieve overall. And so that brings us back to, what you asked, Don, is about when do you kind of know when it's maybe time to make a change, or when should we keep going and persevere with this person that is in a leadership position, mainly those coaches. A couple examples. One, I was an athletic director in Indiana for a couple of years, and a legendary coach from Indiana went out to UCLA, John Wooden. It took him almost 2 decades before he won a national title. Nowadays it seems like coaches are getting fired only after a few years if they're not winning enough. Coach K, at Duke, his first 3 years at Duke, he had a losing record after his first 3 years, yet they stuck with him. And obviously he became a Hall of Fame, a legendary coach with the Duke Blue Devils. So there are those examples. There's also examples, we rarely hear of them, but the examples of you stay with a coach too long. And like as you brought up, Don, in terms of, well, maybe we don't have the budget to make a change, or maybe we're scared to make a change, or maybe, this person is nice, but, I like them. And so I don't really want to ruffle the feathers, or they have 4 kids at home and a wife and 3 dogs. And we just don't want to do that to their family, or whatever that reason. And so we make a bad decision, a bad process decision. So we've got to make sure that we're trusting our process, but that our process is worth trusting. We got to make sure that, hey, have I done everything I can to make sure that if I'm making a decision about Don and whether Don should come back next year, have I done everything I can do to set him up for success, to provide him the resources, the support that he needs to do his job? Oftentimes as ADs, as athletic administrators, or even if you're a principal or a superintendent, we really haven't done what we need to do. And I've seen this a lot, both at the high school and the college level, but we hire someone and then we essentially throw them in the deep end. We essentially say, well, you should know what you're doing. You've been a coach before, but they may not have been a coach at our school. They may not have been a coach in this situation, or they might have been an assistant coach, but never a head coach before. And so we don't really equip them. We don't educate, we don't equip, we don't really train them. And then we don't enhance them. We don't enrich them. We don't make them better throughout the year. You know, a lot of times an AD is a coach of the coaches, a leader of the leaders. And sometimes we're not leading our leaders. Sometimes we're not coaching up our coaches. We're not helping them. And you know, a lot of us, and I was no exception at the high school level. I waited till the end of the year to have these exit interviews or these end of the year evaluation meetings or those kinds of things. And I might bring up some stuff from October. I might bring up some stuff from September or, you know, 3 months ago. Well, they needed to hear that then. If we have a mentality of growth, improvement, development, if we're actually trying to make people in situations better, then we're going to have an ongoing sense of training, an ongoing sense of how can I help our coaches be better. Now, I know that doesn't have anything to do with right this minute in terms of if you have to make a decision this week or in the next couple of weeks, what are you going to do about this coach? Okay, I didn't train them up. I didn't onboard them. I didn't equip them the way I should. You can't go back in a time machine and do that differently now for this coach. But where you look at it is, does this coach have the potential that if I wasn't training them, if I wasn't equipping them, if I wasn't helping coach them up, do they have the ability that if I start doing my job a little bit better as a leader, are they going to be able to embrace that? And am I going to get their potential out of them a little bit? You know, we've all coached, a lot of us have coached a team. If we coach a team and we have an achiever, is it because they just can't do it? They don't want to do it? Or are we just not necessarily giving them the right drills or working with them enough? If we have a coachable coach, maybe if we start lifting them up a little bit, providing them some resources or support, maybe we'll get a little bit more out of them. So looking at your perspective, it starts with us. Leadership starts with us. Have we done what we can do for that coach? And if not, if we start doing maybe what we can do, would that coach change? If that coach, we think, they're probably not coachable. You know, they're probably a little too stubborn. They're probably, you know, you can't teach an old dog new tricks type stuff. Then you have to decide, all right, can we make a move? And if we make a move, what's my hiring process going to be? What's our onboarding process going to be moving forward? Is our system set up so that a new coach coming in is going to be able to achieve success as well? And then you can look at it too, Don, like you talked about financial. You know, am I making a decision based on finances? Hopefully we're not making too many decisions based on finances, because then that can then go against our overall values. But we want to look at what is our process? What is our overall mission? What is our overall values? What are we doing as a leader to make people and make situations better? Is the coach that we have coachable? And we've all been around uncoachable coaches. That doesn't help anybody. That doesn't help parents, our community. That definitely doesn't help our student athletes. And so we want to look at a lot of those kind of things. But are we communicating to our coaches? Have we put an improvement plan in place? Have we done things from our perspective to help that coach be better, to give them every opportunity to succeed? And if not, then we may have to make a decision. Now, what are we going to do? You know, are we going to promote from within? Are we going to make it someone from the outside coming in? But no matter who takes over that role, are we then going to put some guardrails in place, put a plan in place so that we're not sitting here 2 or 3 years later thinking the same thing? Gosh, we're in a tight situation. We don't have the budget, but we got to make a change because this just isn't the right leader. What can we do to develop leaders to coach up our coaches? So I said a lot of things there without maybe giving you a 3-step process, because sometimes it's going to be a feel. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the year and you haven't really had many conversations with this coach, or you don't really know this coach and whether they're capable of turning it around a little bit, then that's something you're going to have to improve as a leader for yourself moving forward. Now, that doesn't mean you still don't make a change. Sometimes it could be partly your fault, but you still have to make a change, and the collateral damage is going to be that coach loses their job. That might be the case, but you're then going to be better for the next coach, and that person, might be better at their next coaching job based upon, how that exit strategy or that exit meeting goes. But yeah, I love you bringing up the RU Darby thing, because that is something I think sometimes we do have to think, all right, can we persevere a little bit longer if they have a good mentality or a good attitude, or if they're coachable? If it's just something maybe I haven't put in place, yes, I'm frustrated, but can I keep moving on with this person if maybe I can help them in some certain areas, especially a younger coach? A younger coach that maybe you hired, it was their first head coaching job. Maybe there's some things you can put into place to help them develop and be a better coach.
Yeah, I think that the way that you kind of frame that answer is not something that I probably would have gone to immediately, but it is that idea that it, don't even focus on that coach. Focus on yourself. Like go look in the mirror and go, what have I done to be part of their either success or failure or growth or lack thereof? I think you start there, and then that leads you down that road where where you can make a decision one way or the other. I think it's a great answer.
Well, and some of that's too going to be, and there's seems like a million different dynamics to a question like you asked, which is a great question, and we all have to go through it at some point. But what's your administrative support? What's the history of that position or the history of your department? What kind of what kind of street cred do you have as a leader? How much have you built up with the community or with that parent base or with the other coaches on your staff? There's so many different layers to this, but at the end of the day, we want we should be trying to do things that are best for our students and our community.
Right.
And going with a coach, sticking with a coach who's bad for our students is not going to benefit anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But what might be bad for one parent might not be bad for some of the other parents if there's some improvement done, or if there's some growth and development. But sometimes, yeah, you're gonna have to make a change, and we've all been there. I mean, I've been the one that's had to get rid of a football coach who was brother to the school board president.
Bold place, sir.
There's things like that where we all have to go through that if we're an AD or in the leadership role long enough. We have to make tough decisions sometimes that maybe are going to be politically not convenient or politically not comfortable.
Yeah. And so let's kind of lean into that idea about connection and communication, because to your point, if you haven't had that, or if you haven't delivered it in a way where it lands, then you really don't have anybody to blame but yourself. So if trust is truly built through connection, and I believe it is, then it stands to reason it can also be quietly broken in the same space. What's one small communication habit leaders overlook that, when neglected, it slowly chips away at trust, maybe even when their intentions are good?
Well, the very first thing I would think I think is almost defining a word with the word itself. But you said, what's one small communication habit that's neglected? The very first habit I would say is communication.
Sure.
Communication is the communication habit that's neglected. We don't communicate enough.
Yeah.
We don't communicate, period. But setting that to the side, what I think of is assumption. We assume a lot of things. Now, maybe we assume that we don't have to communicate because people will know. We assume that I have a good relationship, so I don't have to say as much. I think back, I was an AD in Indiana, and we went to the state championship for basketball. And we only got so many, sideline credentials, so many passes for the program, for the team. And, like a lot of boys basketball coaches, our boys basketball coach, had, a million people that they wanted to give passes to. And so we ended up having more people that wanted to get in for sideline credentials than we had credentials for. And so I went to one of the assistant coaches who I really trusted a lot. I thought we had a good connection to a degree, but I went to him and I said, listen, we're going to let some of the other people go in with the sideline credentials and you can drive in with me. And I thought that was a good solution. You can just drive in with the AD. not an issue. You won't even need a credential because you're with me. Well, he was like, okay, that's fine. And he kind of had a frown on his face. And I was like, okay, I didn't think much of it. And then I heard that he started talking to people and he was criticizing me and my decision. And he was hurt by that. And it come to find out, like I had not come to find out, but I had assumed because he was I thought he was a mature coach and he was, but I assumed that he would be okay with a decision like this because he knew I had to make a decision. People are sometimes okay with decisions as long as it doesn't affect them. He was hurt because he wanted to go in and essentially march in, get off the bus with the team, walk in with the video, with the cameras, the TV cameras, walk in with the team. He wanted that. People want affirmation. People want to be acknowledged. People want that sometimes. And I assumed that he would be okay knowing that I had to make a decision. Now, that's a silly example, a silly illustration, but I assumed or I took advantage of his maturity, of him being a veteran, that he would understand where I'm coming from. But I didn't understand him and just human nature and him wanting to be a part of that team and walking into that arena there in downtown Indianapolis. And so I think sometimes we assume things and we take advantage of people without really having any ill will or ill intent or malicious intent. We and actually in case I felt like he's the one person in that program that could handle that had the maturity to handle that. So it was really a compliment in a way to him, is my way of thinking, but I didn't stop to think about how he was thinking. So either assumption or just not seeing someone's perspective. But we do take advantage, I think, of the people that work for us. If you belong to a church, you see this sometimes. The same people do everything in a church sometime, and you wear them out. We go to people. I know this is getting slightly off the communication habit, but we go to people that we trust more than people we don't trust. We assume that they're going to be okay with this because it's almost they're valued because we trust them, but we take advantage, we assume. And so sometimes we don't communicate why we're doing something or why we're going to them or why we're asking them to do this special thing, or hey, can I'm asking, I expect this from you because you're a leader and people will follow you or whatever it is. So we assume and then we don't spell it out for them sometimes. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that that came to mind when you asked that, is we assume a little bit too much of people.
Yeah. Did you find that changed how you interacted with people after that?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And it became, even if I had to make a tough decision, it wasn't going to be me dictating that decision to them. It
Hmm.
was more so, hey, we've got this issue. I've got this thing coming up. How would you feel if we did this? Or
Right.
if we did this, do you think that that would be a good route to take? Or how would you feel about that? So it didn't mean that I would never make a tough decision, because as a leader, sometimes you do have to make tough decisions and you can't make everybody happy. You're not selling ice cream. You can't make everybody happy. But there are times when, especially like this situation, this is a guy that I trust. This is a guy that was mature. You know what? I might think that I'm pretty smart sometimes, but the reality is I'm not as smart as when another smart person is with me and we make a decision together, or two other smart people are with me. We just, we compound that the chances of coming to a good decision, or maybe seeing something that I didn't see otherwise as a leader, because we're limited as leaders. We're limited. Even if we've been around a million years, we're still limited and we maybe don't see every perspective. So asking and bringing someone I trust into a decision, especially when I know it's going to be a really tough or maybe an unpopular decision, or maybe there's really no right way to do it. Like every single thing, someone's going to be unhappy. So what can we do? Maybe there's something I haven't thought of. So just assuming that either people are going to be okay with my decisions, or just assuming that, well, I'm the boss, so live with it.
Yeah.
Any way you cut it, that's not a good for a relationship.
Yeah, and I'll give a plug, not because they're sponsoring this, and not because Phil is on this call, and Quite frankly, I don't care about that. That is the cool part about the NIAAA is that you're able to increase that ceiling, right? Of people that you can call, people that you can lean on, people that you can reach out to that are not just in your small little bubble. Because when you do that, you're only limited to those people. Well, if those people, if they don't have a growth mindset, if they're not elite, if they just kind of are what they are, it's going to be very hard for you to grow, right? But when you're a part of an organization like the NIAAA and you're able to kind of expand that network, I'm getting ready to get on a plane to go somewhere that I never thought I would ever go. Because of my connections that I've made through the NIAAA. I'm scared to death. I hate flying. Completely different conversation for a completely different episode of the Roundtable. We'll cross that when we come to it. However, I digress. So, kind of getting back to what you were talking about, I want to bring up something. Our book recommendations today. I want you to talk about the coaches bulletin board and then the team captain's playbook for a second. But you kind of what you were just saying leads into something that's in the coaches bulletin board when you write, it's not what we say, but what they hear, right?
Mm.
Like that was one of those. That's exactly what we're talking about. Is that it wasn't that you said something wrong. You wanted to include him in that moment. It's what he heard. Oh, I'm excluded from this other opportunity. Maybe talk about those two books and share a little bit about that.
Yeah, and Don, that's a great point because we're all slightly different. Our personalities, the way we lead, the way we live our life. I tend to be much more analytical. I'm much more logical with things, and so there's a saying: facts don't care about your feelings. But on the flip side, you could say feelings don't care about your facts. You
True.
know, people make decisions sometimes based on emotion and based upon how they feel. And so, you know, I can say something. It's not what I say; it's what they hear. But they might hear something totally different than way I'm intending what I'm saying. Communication for good communication to occur, someone has to interpret it the way you intended it to be interpreted.
Mm.
And so, if emotion or feeling gets in the way, then what I'm saying falls upon deaf ears because they didn't hear it because their emotion is getting the better of them. Well, that's not necessarily wrong. That's just we're built differently. We're all wired slightly differently, and so we have to understand that. But yeah, so great point there. But yeah, the bulletin board book. I know a number of you watching this, listening to this. You're on X, you're on Twitter. I see you there, and a lot of us follow each other, and I appreciate that. But so essentially, the bulletin board book was my attempt to put Twitter into paperback form. So it's a whole bunch of quotes, a whole bunch of insights. Some of them are by me. About half of them are by me. Half of them are smarter people. So we try to do insights and quotes and a lot of different topics to allow you to copy and paste them on Twitter or on your social media on Facebook or put them on your bulletin board in your locker room or your in your office, whatever. So, it was a fun book to put together. I shouldn't say a fun book to write. I'm not sure how much I actually wrote, but it's putting it together, putting my thoughts in little bite-sized form. So that was something that we put together. We've done a number of books. That's probably the book that's read the most, only because it's easy. You don't have to read it from cover to cover, and you can just go through it really quick. The second book there that you had up on the screen is the Team Captain's Playbook, and that's coming out in May. So a little over a month from now, that's going to come out, and that's I think if my math is right, 56, 8 weeks times 7 days, so 56 lessons on being a team captain, and it's a workbook. So there's places for your team captains, or your leadership, student athlete leadership group, if you want to go through that. But there's a place in there to answer questions and go through it. So there's 56 topic or 56 topics / stories / illustrations, things we talk about to be a great team captain, and then a bunch of questions to kind of nail down that conversation or nail down that topic. And so that's been a fun book to put together as well.
That's good stuff. And to kind of to get back to the bulletin board book, the way that those of you that haven't seen it, it's broken down by those key words, those key topics, things like character, challenges, Mondays. Let's talk about that for a minute, right? Parents, motivational, mental, management, leadership, and so you can go directly to it. To your point, it's more of like a resource. It's not necessarily let's pick it up and read it, but you could find those things that you're struggling with, and to kind of, I would almost flip what that quote that we said just a minute ago about it's not what we say, but what they hear. I would almost flip that. I tell my guys all the time, listen for truth. When you have a parent that comes at you and they're sideways and they're emotional, you have to understand they are talking about something that deals with their kid. It is the most prized possession they have. It is life and death for them. Sometimes literally, that is their baby, and so they're going to be more emotional than they would be if it was just just a kid that they knew. Listen for truth. It doesn't mean that because someone comes at you sideways that what they say has no merit. And so I would almost flip that and just say, it's not what they say, but what we hear. And so we have to make sure that we are listening to and listening for truth, because I think that's just as important. Um, Jamie, obviously, you were a home run for us today, both in the interview, or you kind of we painted it with a big brush. We got the book recommendation and the podcast recommendation in one fell swoop. So we do appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate it. And sorry, I don't have as cool of a background as all you people at the NI AAA. I'm actually traveling. I just got done speaking at a high school, so I'm in my car at a Chick-fil-A. So I've got a blurred background, so not as cool. So I apologize for
Well,
that. I'm not in my
it's
home
okay. I mean,
office.
as long as you got the Lord's chicken there working with you, so that'll help, I'm sure. Before we let you go, I want to give anybody an opportunity to ask you a question. Becky, I don't know if we've got any specific questions in the chat, but if anybody would like to ask Jamie anything, whether it has anything to do with what we talked about today or something else, feel free to unmute yourself.
Nothing in the chat yet, but hopefully we can get some people to open up and ask some questions.
Well, Don, something you said, I love what you said about listen for truth.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, and Stephen Covey in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of those habits is seek first to understand, then to be understood. When we're having conversations a lot of times, and he goes on to talk about this, is that most of us listen with the intent to reply. We don't listen, like you said, listen for truth. We don't listen to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And when that parent is coming at us sideways, when that parent is emotional, when that parent is going off on us, oftentimes, and this is where, as a consultant, it's much better to be a consultant than it is to be an AD, because I can just tell you what you should do, but
Why
then I
don't you
don't actually have to do
why
it.
don't you do that and then you leave? Yes.
That's right. But I
Yeah.
have done all this stuff. That's why I'm smarter than all of you, because I no longer
Yeah.
do it.
There's a
I
fire.
no
There's a
longer have to
fire
be
over
on the
there.
front lines.
There's a
But
fire over
anyway,
there, and then walk
yeah.
off. Yeah.
But anyways, when they're going off on you, most of the time, how I was I just can't wait for Mr. and Mrs. So and so to be done talking so
Yeah.
that I have a great response to them. I can tell them the way it is. I can lay down the law. But oftentimes we don't actually listen to what they're saying, and we might actually be able to pick up a nugget or two on maybe what our coach could do differently, maybe what I could do differently, maybe pick up a nugget on how to maybe motivate or inspire their kid,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just waiting for them to be done so we can reply to them. We might actually pick up some stuff along the way. Now sometimes we might not, um, but oftentimes we need to learn to listen and listen to learn a little bit better. As you said, listen for truth in there. We might be able to pick up a strategy or two, or something about that kid, or something about the situation that might help us right now, but it also could help us in the future. So, don't just discount them because they're crazy. Uh, and even if they're a resounding gong, even if they're always complaining about something, there might be something in there that you could pick out that, if nothing else, maybe I can communicate a little bit better ahead of time. Yeah, they're being a little baby, or yeah, they're complaining for, they're being picky about this. Well, maybe I could learn a little bit something and be a little bit better as a leader.
Yeah, and because that's coming from somewhere. Morgan, I think that's a great point. This idea for listen to understand, don't listen to respond. Too many times as leaders, the whole time they're speaking, we're thinking about what we're going to say, right? And this is another thing too. It's a pause is okay. You don't have to immediately, the second they're done, lean in and with your rebuttal. Right? It's not like you don't. It's not like you're playing ping pong. Like it doesn't have to be immediate. There, you can digest that for a moment and then respond. In a lot of instances, obviously, there's exceptions to everything, but at the same time, when you do respond, I think clarity is kindness. This idea of being very honest, right? Being very honest and saying whatever it may be, whether if it's have you been to practice, have you seen, have you been able to see your kid against all of these other kids? I've had conversations with parents like that before. Maybe if you would go and watch, maybe that would give you a little bit more clarity, and that's me kind of hitting them right between the eyes. But at the same time, that's I think there's a lot of kindness in clarity sometimes. So just my 2 cents. Anybody else, feel free to unmute yourself.
Hey, Don, along those lines, when listening to a parent, the advice was given to me, I'm going to kick it back old school, and some people on this call won't know what I'm talking about. But when we used to watch movies in class, and it was literally the projector, and the teacher might not be paying attention, and it runs out, and that tape starts flapping. So, like, listen until they absolutely have exhausted what they're going to say, like you said, pause. And then my first response back to them was, I appreciate you bringing this to me. How might you offer a solution? And their solution that they've already thought through is often very revealing to me as a leader of what they want. What's the purpose in bringing this forward? And if they don't have a solution, it means that they're just mad and want to be heard. They hadn't even thought it to the next level.
Yeah, I think another one too. In order to buy yourself some time in that interaction, it's okay to ask a question as well. I think a lot of times I've gotten a lot of stuff out of what I'm hearing you say, right? So what I'm hearing you say is twofold. Number one, it buys me a minute. It also shows that person that I'm listening to them. If I can tell it right back to them, yes, they know I'm listening to you. I'm trying to help you, and it also buys me a few seconds that I can kind of get my thoughts in order before I have to respond. Anybody else? All right, fair enough. Jamie, before we let you go, how can our folks connect with you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can go to jamiebeckler.com is my website. And my first name is spelled weird and my last name is spelled weird. But jamiebeckler.com, it's right there on the screen, though. You just put the words together and put .com, or on Twitter or X at Coach Beckler. And those are the two best places to get things that I'm doing, or in terms of insights and stuff, or like books we have available, or we have a bunch of articles, things like that, podcasts, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, if you follow me, you're not going to learn who my favorite team is or where I'm eating or even where I spoke today. I don't put that kind of stuff on Twitter. We try to put only helpful stuff to other people. So yeah, we try to help as many people as possible. Help you have good coaches and good teammates and good leaders in your school, things like that. We try to help as much as possible.
Good deal, Jamie. Thank you so much for the time, and talk soon.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
All right, see ya. All right, before we get out of here, and before I kind of open it up to everybody else, I heard a quote recently that it really resonated with me, and I think it resonates with a lot of people, and it resonates with a lot of articles that I've seen around the country for the last several years. I think one of the top kind of hot topics is abusive coaching practices. That it was a year ago. I think it still is today, and I think that a lot of that starts with us as athletic leaders when we look at our staff and articulating to our staffs that Your example becomes someone else's permission. Let me say that again. Your example becomes someone else's permission. And I think that's a home run of a statement. It's not my statement. I heard it and I was like, I've got to tell as many people of this as I can. I've got several coaches that they run hot all the time. And those are the staffs and those are the teams that we have more issues with unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, and just penalties in general, ejections, yellow cards, whatever it may be. It's because what they're seeing is the person who is supposed to be in charge is unhinged 2 minutes into the game. Well, that means that I can be. And then it just kind of rolls downhill. And it's just as important for position coaches as it is, or assistant coaches, as it is for the head coach, because we all know that kids form attachments to those position specific coaches that maybe are a little different than that head coach. Well, if they're all acting in unison and they're all acting the same and it's not good, that's going to manifest itself on the field. So I just thought that was a great quote. Your example becomes someone else's permission. And so feel free to use that. I can't tell you where to quote it from. Don't quote me on it, because I got it just like everything else in this business, right? Is that we're going to beg, borrow, and steal. Another thing that I recently went to a workshop dealing with conflict and delivering difficult information, and kind of wanted to share some of the things that came out of that. This idea that bad news doesn't get better with time. We've talked about this before when we talk about the bison running through the storm to get on the other side, as opposed to the cow that runs away and just has to stay in it. But that idea, bad news doesn't get better with time. People aren't going to be in a better mood because you waited to get back with them with something that was difficult. And I thought that was pretty telling. At the same time, we talked about this idea that you're going to have conflict with good people. Just because someone is hot and mad and frustrated or comes at you in a certain way doesn't mean that they're not a good person. It just means in that moment they've gotten carried away. And so this idea about responding appropriately in those moments and seeing those people in totality, I think, is extremely important. Care personally and challenge directly. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, you can do both of those things, and I think that that's huge. And then when you're talking about any issue that you're dealing with, this idea of identifying the issue equates to it being halfway solved. If we don't know what the issue is, it makes it really, really hard. We're stumbling out of the blocks at that point. But if we can identify the issue to begin with, we're halfway to getting it solved. And once we can put our finger on it, we can assess it, and then at that point we can move forward. And so I think that those were just some things that came out of that workshop that I wanted to kind of share with everybody today, in the hopes that would kind of help everybody. And again, don't be afraid to pause anytime that you're something is put on your desk. Obviously, sometimes we get stuff, it's got to be dealt with right now. But there's other things that it's okay to pause. It's okay to research. It's okay to make some phone calls. It's okay to develop a plan before we press play on it, because by doing that, by getting a proper understanding of the problem, that's that first step to solving it. And our instincts often just to jump in the pool, right? But we don't always have to do that. And so don't feel like you have to, especially if you're young and early in your leadership journey and you're on here. Don't feel like everything has to be fixed immediately. That was something I had to learn, that it's going to be okay if, when we're ready to attack it, we're ready to attack it, that we've got all the clubs in the bag, so to speak. And so just kind of wanted to share those things with you. If anybody's got anything else, it can be dealing with conflict or it can be anything else. We are here to help. And so by all means, feel free to unmute yourself. If you've got something you want to talk about or discuss, let's talk about it.
So the opposite of conflict, I just want to remind everybody on the call that the deadline for nominating positive athletes is quickly approaching. It's mid-April here in Georgia. I venture to say it's probably about the same for each of the regional areas. But for anyone who doesn't know what positive athlete is, I did put it in the chat, the website, and it is for all 50 states. Nominations are being accepted right now. Costs you nothing, costs the athlete nothing. It is actually just an amazing way to recognize our athletes.
Good deal. That's a home run of a program. It is exactly what she says it is. It is just a way to recognize your kids and highlight the best of what your kids and your coaches are doing. So highly recommend it. Anybody else? I know that he's on the phone, and so we'll see if he hangs up before I quit talking. We talked a lot about communication in here and how we interact with people. With me, it's a lot of interacting with the 16 local high school athletic directors that oversee our coaches and our kids. I know that Daryl Nance, I see that he's on the call. He and I had a conversation. I'm glad he was able to find a period there and hang that phone up. But we have had a conversation about how he, from a personality assessment standpoint, evaluated his ADs so that whenever he picks that phone up to call them or they call him, he kind of knows how to communicate with them. Daryl, if you don't mind, could you speak to that for just a minute?
Yeah, thanks, Don. I was the boss I was talking to. So,
Well, is what it is. Tell him I'll take it up with him later.
I was talking about my wife. So,
You're on your own there, boss.
That's right. No, we do. Our district is big on Gallup strengths, and then we also do this color personality test that I do. And so I've got a grid right above my phone that has all my ADs' names on it and what their strengths are from the Gallup side, and then what their communication style, their leadership and communication style is. So if I have to call them with bad news, as we talked about that, you talked about that with Jamie and all that. I mean, there's going to be bad news. There's going to be things that happen. I will look at that list and see, all right, here's Don. These are his strengths. This is his communication style. This is how I need to frame this conversation. Because if I come in, red hot, because I just got chewed out or I got this bad information, I come in red hot and you're not a red personality, or you're not you're a thinker side or whatever, you're not going to hear, all you're going to hear is me yelling or raising my voice or angry or whatever the case may be. You're not going to hear the meat of the conversation. And so I try to do that with all my ADs when they call me, when I call them, and then every now and then one or two of them will call me, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, and I look at that list up there and I go, yeah, he'll calm down in about 30 seconds. Or I've actually had a situation where I had to say to an AD, I'm gonna hang up now and I'm gonna let you calm down and you call me back in 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Knowing that was his personality. And then he would call back and I'd answer and he'd say, I'm sorry. I said, great. Tell me what you need to tell me.
Yeah.
And we'll fix it.
Right.
That's what I do.
Good stuff. Anybody else? Good to know that everybody has everything figured out today. Everybody's going to just hit home runs for the remainder of the day. That's good. I hope that today has been helpful. Want to give kind of a preview for our next session in April. We're going to have Alex Demchik. He is a former SEC quarterback for Missouri Tigers. He graduated with a degree in communications and a minor in business. He's a keynote speaker, entrepreneur, and an author who challenges businesses, schools, and teams to maximize their impact. He's the co-founder of Streamline Books, which is a company that helps individuals become authors. He's also the founder of Speaker School, which helps individuals become speakers. He was the co-author of the book The Sale. It's a John Gordon book. Maybe you have seen that book, The Sale. He helped John with that book. That book is a home run, by the way. Super easy read. You can read it in a day, and really, really, really good. So Alex is going to spend some time with us in April, and so looking forward to that. So again, thanks again for taking the time today. We hope that you have found value in the roundtable. If so, please tell a friend. Tell a friend to tell a friend, right? So tell anybody, any and everybody. Lastly, I want to again thank our sponsor for the AD Roundtable, Daktronics, for bringing big league scoreboards and video displays to high school athletics. You can learn more at daktronics.com if that's something that you're interested in. Just remember, you have been placed where you are for a reason bigger than yourself. Hard stop. Okay. Stay kid focused and everything else will take care of itself. Take care, and we will see you next month.